Hi.
Hi, Peter.
Hi everyone. Hi Sumit. Sorry,
How are you?
I had
No
some
problem.
technical issues.
No
No
issue.
Hi everyone.
problem. Hi, Peter.
Let me try to share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. You can probably also see myself, right? And let's maybe also share the presentation.
Yeah, Peter, can we wait for 2 minutes only?
Yes, yes. I just wanted to check whether it's working.
Yeah,
More or
sure.
less.
Yeah, you can test like screen share and other things.
Yes.
Sharing is working fine.
Okay. And this one should be. This you should see the title, right?
Yeah, we can see this coding. Yeah, now we can see title.
Awesome. Then I will stop sharing for now.
Yeah, no problem. You can share the first slide so that everyone can know what is the topic.
Okay.
Okay, Peter, I think we are on time. So welcome to Sitecore User Group Jaipur, and thanks for giving us a chance to so that you can present here. So now you can start with a little bit your introduction and then you go for presentation.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the session about the frameworks, libraries, SDKs. Of course, as this is Sitecore user group, we will also talk about our beloved Sitecore SXA and JSS modules and how they belong to this topic. So let's have a look what I have prepared for you today. I will start with a brief definition of the phrases that we will use throughout this session. Then I will continue with Sitecore SXA and JSS and their definition. And at the end, we will talk about their benefits or drawbacks and drawbacks. But first things first, let me introduce myself. So my name is Peter Prochazka. I work for Accenture for more than 11 years now, from which now around 8 years I'm actively doing Sitecore development. I started with Sitecore ASP.NET MVC. Then I also worked with Sitecore Commerce, Sitecore SXA, Sitecore JSS. I have also 15 years of experience with ASP.NET Web Forms or MVC and also with the ASP Classic. So yeah, I have pretty good past architecting and development experience. I have shifted my toolset and languages that I was working before as I started working with JSS. So before I was more or less more like a backend developer. Now with the JSS, I had to learn JavaScript. I also had to learn the React and all of those stuff. So yeah, you will see what is also Sitecore JSS is about in this presentation. I'm spending my spare time with my family mostly. I also do some running and of course blogging and helping Sitecore community. If you wish, you can also follow me on my blog or LinkedIn or Twitter. And if you are interested, you can also check what I'm currently reading on Goodreads. So this presentation is about libraries, SDKs, and frameworks. Whether you should use them, whether they are useful, or you should halt, or that you are halting you back. As we are using Sitecore, we will mainly talk about SXA and JSS, and whether you should use them or not. In other terms, when and by which conditions they are helping, and opposite when they are not. Developers use terms like libraries and frameworks interchangeably. So let's first understand what these phrases mean and what are the main differences. Simply put, a library is a packaged reusable chunk of code that performs a certain function or set of closely related functions. So more or less, you can think about library as a set of some functions that you reuse within your project. You can insert the library into your application and call it when you need it to implement the function without having to write the code from scratch. Suppose that instead of an application, you are building a house. One of the things you will need for that house is a stove, but it will not be very practical for you, of course, if you build it from scratch. When you just, when you could just buy it off the shelf in a shop. So a library is to an application, if you think about it, it's what the stove is to the house, right? So you can build it by yourself, but you can just, take it, download it, and use it in your project. SDKs have a bit wider scope than the libraries do. In fact, SDKs or SDK is not more than a library or a set of libraries or a collection of libraries, if you wish to call it that way. It also has some API, some documentation, some utility functions, or some utility utilities. It also has some sample codes that help you implement certain features without having to do the work from scratch. SDKs vary in scope and function from implementing a feature or set of features. You can think about Analytics SDK, for instance, to build whole applications for a specific platform, as in the case of Sitecore JSS is, for example. Going back to our house analogy, if a library is a stove, then an SDK is a whole kitchen. While you can go and buy all your kitchen appliances, cabinets, and counters separately, it will be a lot easier to buy a full kitchen set, of course, right? Complete with built-in appliances and instructions on how to assemble it. So instead of doing it yourself, SDKs can be, of course, but yeah, it can be also limited in the scope, such as in the case with one room, right? As we were talking about the kitchen, but they can also have a bigger scope of a collection of rooms or even the whole house. The frameworks are in many ways the inversion of libraries and SDKs. There are also a collection of libraries, some APIs, utilities, and documentation to solve common programming requirements. So you don't need to do it yourself. However, they do that by giving you a foundation on top of which you can build your app rather than giving you the building blocks. While you insert a library into your application and call it from your code to perform certain functions, frameworks require you to insert your code into them, and they call your code at the right moment. In our house analogy, a framework will be exactly that, the house's framework. It is the collection of beams and some posts upon which you build your house and rooms, complete with electrical wiring and plumbing. Having this ready-made structure upon which you can build your house will save you a huge amount of time and effort, of course. So if we summarize some differences between the frameworks and libraries, directly is the inversion of control, as I mentioned. So the diagram shows that when an application code uses a library, the developer writing the code is in charge of the application flow. This means the developer decides when to call the function from the library, right? However, when we use a framework, the framework decides when to call the library. This shift in control of calling the library from the application code to the framework is an inversion of control. If we summarize some differences between the libraries, SDKs, and frameworks, as you can see in the table, like libraries provide reusable functions, frameworks also have reusable functions, but also they have lots of tools. There is lots of tooling, there are lots of standards, templates, and some policies. In the libraries, you are the one who is in the charge of the flow. In the framework is in charge of the flow of the application. A framework enables a coding environment that contains low-level libraries to address conventional coding issues. The objective of a framework is to deliver faster development of an application. This includes everything we need to build large-scale applications, right? For a web application, for example, the JavaScript frameworks provide a skeleton, which are our tools for the fast development. Internally, such a framework contains a large collection of libraries that provides the developer with built-in functionalities. If we take a look on some benefits and some drawbacks, so basically for the libraries, I think the biggest benefit is that you have the reusable functions. It prevents us from having to write the code to solve the same problem over again. Hence the reinvent the wheel question on the meme. Provides us with the opportunity to pick libraries that we want. Encourages programmers to focus on configurable and reusable library development. It will also reduce the application costs because you don't need to write the code if you are reusing the library. Of course, on the other hand, if we take a look on the drawbacks, you need to learn the library, right? So it will take some time. Different versions, there is different functionality of the library, so you need to be also up to speed, up to date with those. You have the vendor lock-in problem that if you choose one library at the beginning of the project, then it's really hard to just switch them, right? If you find out there is a better library to solve similar problem, there are too many libraries to choose from. Also, from the beginning of the project, it's really sometimes hard to determine like which one would be serving the purpose, because you, as an architect, of course, you don't know at the beginning how or where the project will go. So at the time when you are doing the decision at the beginning, maybe the library was the best fit, but as the project grows, as there are different requirements, as there are different functionalities being made, right? Maybe the different library would be better, but yeah, it's hard to, let's say that it's a drawback to do the decision, but at the time that you are doing it is the best what you could do, right? So that was the best library that you could choose. So that's how it is. That's how we need to live with it, and also everybody. So if the library was chosen, it was chosen by some decision, or by some decisions, right? There was some reason for that. So yeah. Sometimes also the libraries are vulnerable for malicious attacks. There is lack of support to maybe fix those issues. There is also lack of support to do some maintenance. So some libraries are more or less just, if you think about it, just released. There are no new versions for lots of time, or when there is only some small bug fixes. Like, yeah, then there are some libraries which have really quick development. They have really lots of versions, and sometimes it's really hard to determine which version, even to choose which version of the library you would use, which version will suit best your requirements. Also, lots of times a library that you are using for years is suddenly abandoned. Nobody is maintaining it anymore, or the people who are maintaining it are not maintaining it in a quality and in the timely manner like the original maintainer, right? So, but yeah, that's how it is. Yeah, we need to live with these kind of things. We need to have them in mind. Basically, for example, if we are choosing a library, it's good that you also check the history, how often you can expect new versions, how often you could expect some security fixes, right? And maybe this could be also one of the decision points why we have chosen this and that library. If we talk about libraries, let's take a look on some which are the most useful ones, or maybe most known ones. Definitely the React is a really nice JavaScript library to build user interfaces. We have jQuery, which is more like a library which is not used these days. But basically this is one of the first libraries that were built with JavaScript that was more or less fixing the issue with the browser compatibility and JavaScript and how it was working on different browsers, right? With jQuery, we had the option to change the DOM, but more or less as we were building those applications, the application's performance was degraded because jQuery is working with the real DOM, right? That's why React found the virtual DOM, that it's much more performance-wise better, right? And that's why lots of people are using now React, not jQuery anymore. We have D3 if you wish to do some data visualizations in the web browsers. We are using underscore, which has a really nice utility, which is a really nice utility library with lots of functionalities. Also, Lodash is something similar. We have then the date FNS. We have Moment.js for dates. Moment.js is basically abandoned these days, right? So maybe the date FNS would be better if you are using it, right? So, and there are lots of more for solving the date problems, for solving the numbers arrays. If you wish, I have also another Brownback session about JavaScript, where I'm also talking about these things. So yeah, please check my blog for those. Then regarding the frameworks, so what are the benefits? Definitely something similar also as I was talking about the libraries. So you have less code. Also, definitely it reduces the development costs. But of course, the drawback is that if you don't know the framework fully, then it will, you need to learn it, right? Then also sometimes if you are not fully aware of the framework, you don't know that there is some functionality that the framework already has, and you will build it yourself. So yeah, it's good that if you are introducing frameworks, libraries, or SDKs into your solution, it would be great if you first familiar with those, that you know them as best as it could, so you can really use most of the functionalities from them. Definitely also one of the benefits of the framework is the extensibility. So the framework has some functionality itself, but you can extend it to either reconfigure some functionalities that the framework provides out of the box and you would wish to have them differently, or you would like to build some new functionalities on top of the framework that you would be or your project will benefit from. Some of the drawbacks, ready-to-use features of the framework sometimes prevent programmers from gaining the in-depth understanding of the programming language. So for example, if you are learning C#, if you use .NET framework, it would be hard to grasp, fully maybe the C# because you are using some functionalities from .NET framework and you don't understand how they will work internally. Something similar as if you start learning React and you don't know JavaScript fully, right? It would be same problem. Also, you have some learning curve at the beginning. There are lots of there are some tweaks, or you can tweak some functionalities, but sometimes it's really hard, or they are limited in the framework. So some things are working in the framework one way, and there is no option to somehow change them. I was talking about this. Yeah, choosing the right one is also something similar problem as with the libraries. At the beginning of the project, you know what will be the requirements, what kind of issues you would like to solve. You will choose a framework, and then a couple of months afterwards, or a couple of years, or a couple of, I don't know, even maybe sometimes weeks, you rethink, or you think about the frameworks again, and you realize that basically you should choose something different because the framework that you have chosen is not suiting the requirements. But that's what we usually do. That's why you should do the architecture of your project the way that it can emerge, it can change, and it's based on the requirements that you have at the point where you are doing the decision. So if you choose to use React, and then in a couple of weeks or months, you will see like, okay, we should benefit also from the Next.js, for example, because it is something on top of React, and we can just move on with Next.js, and it will have already some configuration boilerplate for us. It will have some maybe different structure of the project, but we would benefit from it. Then let's go for it. Let's change the framework or library that we are using. If you see, like, yeah, in this case, it could be maybe easier because the Next.js is a framework on top of the React library. But if you are trying to switch between Next.js and Angular or Vue.js or something different, maybe it would be not so easy, right? Because you are changing basically frameworks which are not compatible. Also, your code, you would need to do lots of rewrites. But sometimes if you take a look, do some tables, do some pros and cons of the frameworks that you are choosing between, or doing some, let's say, POC, or doing some spike, maybe you will determine that really the other framework would be, or the other library, we would benefit more than we are now, right? It will push us to different options, and it will give us different options, the better ones, right? So maybe the change sometimes, even though that its cost makes sense, right? And at the end, we would be saving more than we put in the change of the framework or the library. So some of the frameworks that probably you should know, right? The .NET framework, the Next.js, which is the open source web development framework built on top of Node.js and React. We have the Laravel, which is the PHP one. We have the Ember, we have Vue.js, we have Angular, which are JavaScript frameworks. For example, the Vue.js is the open source, the open view model front-end JavaScript framework to build the user interfaces. Angular is something similar, but it has already some components. So frameworks, even though they are similar, they use different development flow. They have also different features. They have different options how to extend them. These should be the points for your decision which one to choose at the end. Yeah, so okay, we know now what are the libraries, what are the SDKs, what are the frameworks, and what are they used for. But yeah, in Sitecore world, we hear a lot about SXA and JSS. We have now also the XM Cloud release. So let's see what the December or November or when it will be publicly released for us. What kind of features it will bring us. But for now, let's talk about SXA and JSS and whether they are libraries, SDKs, or frameworks. So Sitecore SXA or the Sitecore Experience Accelerator is a great framework for development using Sitecore MVC approach that helps you speed up the development process, content creation, of course, and overall the experience of the content editor with Sitecore platform. It has toolboxes and lots of other features that I will talk later on. As the definition of the framework said, SXA is bringing the foundation on top of the language, which is using, in this case, it's built on top of Sitecore, as we can see on the diagram. It's also a great example of how to implement Helix principles in real projects. So if you are not using SXA and you are on the old Sitecore MVC, definitely you would be benefiting from the SXA, because lots of things or lots of features that SXA has, you are usually building from scratch or you are just reusing from your previous projects. So I would say that if you are using SXA, it would be great because if you are switching between the projects, you would see similar approaches to the same problems, right? So for example, tenants and sites. Lots of times, if we are building Sitecore multi-tenant, multi-site solutions, we were creating templates, we were creating insert options, we were creating some scripts how to create tenants and sites and do the multi-site solution. SXA has this already out of the box, so why to reinvent the wheel? It has even the modules, which is a really nice feature that basically you can put their components, configurations, whatever, lots of stuff into the modules. You can then just enable them on your site, and you will enable content editors on different sites to have different modules, different components, different settings, and all of those things. Also, when I was working with SXA, the page and partial designs were like a killing feature for the content editors, because previously the developers were the ones who were preparing the page designs. If we think about that, so in the standard values on the page templates, you would need to specify what components there will be out of the box. Let's say when you create a new page, right? With the page and partial designs, you are giving this option to content editors to really nicely add components to the pages or to the partials, so they can more or less compose them pages based on their preferences. They can prepare these by themselves, and they don't, like, the developers don't need to bother. That's why also what I liked about SXA, that lots of features are out of the box also for the content editors. So basically, as a developer, you only really need to think about some business value that you are bringing with your components, with your Sitecore setup, with your configuration, right? So you don't need to deal, or you don't need to bother with some things that we were over and over again, developing, implementing for different clients on different projects, but SXA has them already, and you just need to customize them. This is one of the things, for example, this toolbox that I really like, that it really push the content editing to the next level, because usually, you had to click on the placeholder to add the component. With the toolbox, you have list of the components already on your right side of the screen, and with the mouse or with your finger, you could just drag and drop components to the placeholders. So yeah, really cool feature. It also shows you that some of the components are disabled for some placeholders because they will be, read out. So really cool feature. You have also a snippet, for example. So for the content editors, they could create these kind of snippets. So they could compose these snippets out of some simple components, like for example, the rich text, some single line text, images, and basically anything. And then if they are reusing this, they could really quickly create on different pages, different content. Where we are, here we are. Yeah, Sitecore JSS represents a set of JavaScript packages and sample applications that add first-class support for JavaScript frameworks and enable the development of modern applications that consume Sitecore data. This is a really great example of the SDK because it has lots of functions. It has also some tooling, right? But it's not a framework. It's really just an SDK because on top of JavaScript, you have the React library, and then you are just adding more functionalities with the JSS. So it has its own create functions for the command line that you can create a project, you can create components with that, right? You can deploy your project with the command line or with the terminal in Visual Studio Code, right? So it really has lots of features, and there is a thin line between the SDK or framework here, but definitely the JavaScript services or JSS are SDK. So if we take a look on this one, basically before there was a Sitecore JavaScript services, which was on top of Sitecore, and only the JSS was using it. Then Sitecore basically enabled also development or usage of this also from the .NET Core, and therefore they renamed it to headless services. So now the middle part is called Sitecore headless services, and therefore also the JSS is using it. With the JSS, you have a couple of frameworks and libraries which are supported, React and Next.js. You have also Angular, you have Vue.js, and also experimentally also React Native. I think for the future, it makes sense to maybe start the project with React or even with the Next.js, because as we also did some research, React is one of the most popular libraries or frameworks used. So as you can see, this is the satisfaction and this is the usage. So really the React nails it. And as you can see, the trend is that it will stick with us for a couple of more years, I would say. Next.js is just another framework on top of React, which is adding some more functionality. So I think it's worth to use or at least think about Next.js for the future. So start the project with React. If you are not familiar with Next.js, then maybe gradually upgrade it to Next.js. So what are some enhancements of the JSS? Yeah, definitely the CLI. It's a really nice node-based command line tool that has lots of commands that you can create or maintain your applications with. Then you have the headless services, which is a core JavaScript package that is being used by the Sitecore Edge, also the endpoints, and it's using the REST and GraphQL. There are also some abstractions for the front-end developers, and there are lots and lots of utility functions and front-end components for you to more or less use, or you can use it as an example how to build components using the JSS. It also has certain topologies, the headless one and the integrated one. The headless one is where more or less in between the CD server and the browser sits also some kind of proxy, which is doing the heavy lifting, right? Which more or less then the application is like some kind of client-side rendered, right? That you are just using some APIs from the Sitecore CD and the layout service, and then it is being rendered. With the integrated, it behaves somehow similar to the usual Sitecore MVC model, so you can also do the editing in the experience editor. But more or less, when you are hitting the endpoint or some URL in Sitecore with this setup, with this integrated, more or less the heavy lifting is done on the CD server, and basically the whole page is server-side rendered and is pushed to your browser. Here, you could use CDN to speed up the things, right? So yeah, there are lots of options. Yeah, so what are some benefits and drawbacks? Lots of companies were building their own frameworks and libraries in the past for Sitecore development. Maintenance and upgradability of these projects was, I would say, not so good. So I would say the biggest benefit of SXA and the JSS is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's also about some reusability, because like lots of times also in our company, we had our own libraries or frameworks when we were building, and when we were taking care of some projects from other companies or other clients, there was some learning curve at the beginning, like how the solution is working, how it was built, how to maintain it, how to extend it, right? There were always these kind of questions, because it was really hard at the beginning to grasp basically a completely different platform. Because even though we were working with Sitecore, the solution, the structure of the solution in the Visual Studio, the functionalities, the customizations, how content editors are working with the platform, how they choose images, so lots of things. When they were customized, it was really nice, but then the solutions were like completely different ones between what we were doing. It was really hard to, let's say, hop on the train and really start developing on those different solutions or different company solutions from day one, right? So it was really like a steep learning curve, and yeah, it was really hard to maintain those projects. With SXA and JSS, you have some standardization, let's say. So it's also one of the points here stands. It's standardizing the coding practices. With SXA, you are already following the Helix principles, so it's really hard for you to just follow that, and you will see like, okay, these components or these changes are going to the feature, or I can see them in the feature SXA layer, right? So it makes sense that also when I'm creating a new module or a new feature, I will put it to the feature layer or feature project in Visual Studio. On the other hand, if I see in SXA that they have done some search customizations in Foundation, if I need to do something similar, I would also put it to the Foundation, or the project would be named starting with the Foundation at the beginning, right? So like if you are already following SXA, you are also following Helix, or you should. It really makes sense, right? At the end, lots of this kind of, or SXA and JSS, it simplifies many tasks and challenges, right? As I showed you with SXA, you have the toolbox, you have the site and tenant creation, for example. So lots of things that we were doing before, or even they were not existing because the toolbox was not existing. You were usually using the out of the box add component functionality, right? So it's not only adding some nice tweaks, but it's also like completely like new features are coming, right? So really nice enhancements. And then basically, as I also mentioned, like the frameworks effectively bootstraps the process of the application development. So it's standardized. So with JSS, you are creating components with certain commands. So if you switch to a different project, which is also built on top of JSS, you would also use the same principles, use the same practices, right? With SXA, it would be the same. If I need to introduce a new component, I would create a new module, and then content editors can add that module and add that component to that side, right? So really the things are standardized, so it's really easy then, and it's also reducing the time. Then when you need to do that task yourself, you have it already in the framework. And of course, the community for both of the modules is really great. There are lots of people, also myself on Stack Exchange and also on Slack, which if you paste a question, they will try to answer it either from their experience or they just from their curiosity. Lots of questions that I answered on the Stack Exchange, I didn't know about nothing, let's say, at the beginning, but when I posted the answer, I already did myself some investigation. I already did myself some homework myself. I tried some things, and then I could paste the answer. I think lots of also answers also on Stack Exchange are like this. So definitely Sitecore has a really awesome community. You should also join it and first start asking the questions and then give it back. So also answer the question later on. Also, it's not about these community servers, it's about blogging, it's about lots of other things. So when you are Googling or searching on the internet for some issues that you can encounter, definitely somebody already blogged about that, or at least there is some Stack Exchange question, or maybe there is some question on Slack. But the issue with Slack is that not all the questions that were asked in the past you can also see, right? Because they are already somewhere in the archive. The best is definitely to use the Stack Exchange. Yeah, some drawbacks, definitely the learning curve, because Sitecore MVC, you know how to do the React development, right? But learning SXA and JSS practices will definitely take you some time, right? Because it's a bit different approach. Instead of directly adding components in SXA, you need to add them to the modules and modules to the sites and so on. Also, a significant disadvantage for the teams is then the learning or leaning heavily on the library or framework. So it can obscure some of the learning necessary to gain a better understanding of Sitecore itself. Something similar as I mentioned before, that basically if you are new to Sitecore and you start working on Sitecore SXA or JSS project, then you usually start this way, right? So you learn SXA and JSS and you don't learn the React, you don't learn Sitecore MVC development, so you don't know why certain things are working that way in SXA, because you don't know how they are let's say working the normal way when you are developing Sitecore MVC solutions, right? So also you don't know how to extend usual Sitecore installation without SXA or JSS, right? And so so it would be great if you are new to Sitecore SXA or JSS and you don't know Sitecore much. It would be great that you learn the old way practices, let's say, and then you can learn the SXA or JSS, because you will benefit out of it definitely, because then you will know how and why certain things are happening in these libraries and frameworks or SDKs. Also, it has some unnecessary extras, definitely, each of them. With SXA, you have lots of features like multi-tenant solutions, right? You have the toolbox, you have the page partial designs, you have also some theming, you have lots of things. The great thing about SXA is that you don't need to provision sites and tenants with all of the modules. So if you are not using theming, you don't need to add that module. If you are not using, for example, SEO, which you should, but if you don't, maybe you don't need that module in SXA, right? But still, it will be there, right? the code will be there, the configuration will be there. So even though that maybe it's not part of that you are not using it, but the code will be there, it will be deployed, the config files will be deployed, and maybe it will obscure something, or it will collide, or there will be some collisions with your configuration, right? So we would need to somehow then fix these issues. Also, if there are some security vulnerabilities, still you would need to deploy them because you are using SXA, even though that it will be for module that you are not using, right? And so forth and so forth. So still the framework that you should always choose should, let's say, fully qualify based on your requirements, but it should have as less extras as possible, because still with these frameworks you will, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So definitely if you are using some framework or library, you should choose it also based on the least amount of extras that it has to you, because then it won't be beneficial for you, but you can also quickly, start having some issues with it, that it has some features which you are not using. But maybe it's also good that you are choosing this, because maybe in the future you will have this kind of requirement. So yeah, as I mentioned, it's sometimes really hard to determine the gold cut, like where it's beneficial and where it's drawback at the end. So when to use SXA, I would say if your developers are experienced with Sitecore MVC development, then definitely SXA could be the next level of development. That more or less lots of features, lots of things that you were before doing yourself or implementing yourself, you can, let's say, leave for SXA, and you can really focus on creating the business critical components for your customer, or do some configurations on Sitecore side, or some different setup. Also, a team which seeks something on top of regular Sitecore MVC development. This could be also one of the reasons why you can also evaluate headless services with ASP.NET Core, because definitely ASP.NET Core is the future also for Microsoft. So yeah, let's see also in Sitecore next versions, maybe in 11, whether it will support still the MVC, or it will be already ASP.NET Core. Yeah, let's see. I would say also time to market is the biggest benefit of SXA, because it has lots of features. We also had once a demo for the client where in 2 weeks we were able to recreate lots of pages from their current website, and we could show them that with SXA they could already have that content quickly created, and we can just continue with some integration components or some business critical components. And the client decided to go this way, so I think it makes sense. And definitely, if the team that you are supervising is, let's say, more backend oriented than front end, I would say SXA makes sense here, because you will be developing the components the old way, but with the rendering variants and all of those features of SXA, basically you can push some of the code that you did yourself already to content editors. Then when to choose JSS, of course, when the team is more, front-end oriented, it's knowledgeable of doing the React development or JavaScript development. And yeah, you also want to do the headless development, but ASP.NET Core is not, let's say, something that you would like to do or wish to test or wish to try, right? You are also building ASP pages, so client side rendered ones. So definitely this is a good starting point, I would say. And yeah, the biggest question is about the XM Cloud, which is coming next month. So let's see how it will work. What will be its benefits or drawbacks, it will be completely new framework for us. So yeah, looking forward. I think it will be new kid in the town, and I think with SXA JSS we will have another, let's say, option, with which we can do the Sitecore development, and also it will be a good starting point for the clients doing the new projects with Sitecore, new implementations. So yeah, if you ask me whether you should do development with Sitecore SXA or JSS, then definitely go for it. Yeah, I'm proud member of Sitecore community, so yeah, you can find me on Twitter, on Stack Exchange, or on Sitecore Slack. So if you have some questions, then always happy to answer and help you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really great session, and thanks for it. We have a couple of questions. We can go over them.
Yep.
So first one is, what will be the benefit of using SXA and JSS in a single Sitecore instance?
As I showed you, SXA has some features like toolbox, right, and all of those other things, which can speed up development at the beginning, right? So I would say this is one of the things. As I mentioned, you don't need to use the multi-site and multi-tenant functionalities of SXA. So even though that you are not using it, you can still benefit of it. But also the drawback is, as I mentioned, that you will have some code that you still need to maintain, or Sitecore need to maintain, and you would need to somehow live with it, right? So I would say that still there are some benefits, even though that you are building the single Sitecore instance. For example, one, as I mentioned with the SXA, is the Helix, right? So if you are not familiar with Helix, or if you are familiar with Helix, SXA already has the structure of items that comes built in. So if you just use it, then you just follow it, and you can be sure that at least you are following Helix in some certain cases.
Okay, and is there any performance hit due to that if we use that in a single instance?
I think not. It's more, I'm always thinking about SXA as a let's say next, or some customization of Sitecore itself, which we are also doing ourselves, right? So it's something on top of Sitecore, which usually is beneficial. It's not like causing some performance issues. I haven't encountered any when we were doing SXA development. It was more of a speed of a development that we did. So there are lots of features. For example, there are lots of components already for search, which we were building over again. And with SXA, you have them already, right? So if you are, for example, if you have some brochureware website, single instance, if you just install SXA, you just push there, or put some components on the pages, more or less you can be done without any coding, or with small coding, right? Or with just maybe creating some theming or styling of the out-of-the-box components, you could already build that kind of site, right? Because there are lots and lots components out of the box that we were building, each project. And with SXA, you have them already. So with SXA, you just need to focus on the ones that are missing, more or less, for the client. So if you have single instance and like a brochureware website, or like simple website with usual components like the hero banner with some navigation on top, right? With some, I don't know, with some section components and links and whatever. It's like, I think, perfect suit.
Okay, thank you. And the next one we have is, JSS don't support SXA components. Will it support in near future?
That's question not for me. I would say I don't know the secret roadmap of SXA or JSS, but because it's a bit different kind of working with JSS and SXA, how the components are being rendered, right? There is a different pipelines are being called, right?
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this is the future, right? Lots of features from SXA are already supported by JSS, like the multi-tenant and multi-site setup, right?
Yep.
So I would say that, yeah, maybe yes, I don't know.
Okay. Now the next question we have is, will it be easy to upgrade a Sitecore JSS project?
You mean upgrade like the JSS project itself, like from version,
Yep.
I don't know, Sitecore 9 to 10 or?
Right.
Probably. Yeah.
Right.
I would say it's something similar as what we are doing on Sitecore MVC, right? With the upgrade. So you just need to upgrade, or you just need to change the npm packages that were on pair with the version of Sitecore that you were doing before, and you just need to pump them to the version that I don't know, if you are upgrading for Sitecore 9, you would change, for example, the JSS from version 13 or 14 to version 15 or 16 or whatever, right? And then it should more or less work, because the JSS, it's just really a library or SDK. So it's just more or less pumping up the version of the React that is being used, but your code should be working the same way. There are no breaking changes in between the JSS versions, or not major ones, I would say. So your codes should be still working. It's more like they are adding functionalities, not removing.
Okay,
It will be
thanks a
manual,
lot.
I would say.
Yeah, one few
follow-up
question regarding that, Peter. Sorry,
Yep.
sorry to interrupt you. So, like
Yep.
for example, if we are upgrading and in our 9.3 version we are using React with JSS, right? And then after upgrading into 10.2 or 10.1 version, we want to utilize Next.js. So, how difficult it will be to like migrate into Next.js?
That's a bit different question, right? Than the original one. Then it's a more complex, right? Because you are not just upgrading the npm packages, but you are more or less also changing the structure, because with Next.js you have a different structure of how the components are there, how the pages are there, right? Or where are there, what is the location. Of course, you also need to take in consideration that probably when you are working with React and JSS, you did some customizations on that, right? Because that's just what Sitecore is giving you, right? It's not like here is the JSS and you won't touch it anymore, right? When we are building the JSS projects, we are also usually changing the JSS classes or JSS functions, or like files itself, because it would be, let's say, useless to create our own just to override something. So we are overriding directly. You just need to know like which files were changed. And with Next.js, you just need to think about that. Okay, you will maybe start. I would maybe start, let's say, with clean slate with Next.js, and I would gradually move components there, because it has a different type of working, right? Also, I think it depends on how or in which topology you are working, right? If you are, let's say, using the server-side rendering with the integrated mode, probably upgrading to Next.js would take a bit longer, because there with the Next.js, even though you have the server-side rendering, it's a bit different working, right? So I would say that it depends on the project. Let's put it this way. It's really hard to, let's say, answer these kind of questions if I don't see the code, if I don't see the setup, the complexity of the solution, right?
Okay. Yep. Got it. That
Okay,
makes
thank
sense
you.
too. One more last question we have, and I guess that partially you already answered in before question, but let's go over that. It's like, does Sitecore provide tool to upgrade version, or will it be manual always?
I think with the JSS it's manual, but it's really simple one, I would say, because you really just need to change the npm packages to the new ones, deploy the solution, or build and deploy the solution and check whether there are some errors, whether everything is working. But more or less the undergoing or the headless services between Sitecore 9 and 10 have not much change. So I would say that this upgrade should be easy. With SXA, you have some tool for that, right? So more or less SXA has some PowerShell scripts or Sitecore PowerShell extension scripts, which are upgrading also the content. So in between the versions. So SXA is maybe more enhanced in this sense to the upgrade, because then it's informing you on each item that it has been upgraded, and it will just create a new version for you. So it's more enhanced, I would say, in this sense, but it's because how SXA is on top of Sitecore MVC. The JSS is, let's say, a separate solution. So it's only consuming some layout service or some headless services. So it's like a detached from Sitecore. So with JSS, in theory, with your front-end project, you could just take what you have and connect it to completely different CMS system. Of course, it's not that easy, right? But in theory, you could do that, right? SXA is built with Sitecore on top of Sitecore, so it would be really not so easy to switch to CMS. But with JSS, it is. So it's really the JSS is really, you can think about it as a tooling on top of React itself, which Sitecore gives you to help you to grasp the connection between your front-end solution and Sitecore at the end, or Sitecore headless, right? So that's why here it's the upgrade manual, but with SXA, because SXA is baked on top of Sitecore itself, then the upgrade can be, let's say, more streamlined, or more automatic in that sense.
Okay, and maybe in the new feature we may have some upgrade module like we have for Angular. There also they provide some upgrade module for that. Maybe like once is no widely used, so in that particular scenario they may come up with those libraries as well. Yes, so I guess from this we are done with the questionnaire, and it's really great to have you on the user group of Jaipur, and we'll further see that we'll have some more insightful session as well in the near future.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. Yep.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.